it's a real bloodbath on many, many levels. And I think I've just found it fascinating watching all these people who tried to suck up to Trump getting absolutely nothing in return for that.
Let's connect with Zoe and Rebecca about how they're feeling about the tariffs. Zoe, we are starting to see the effect of them now, but there's no backing down. Donald Trump saying he's not looking at pausing tariffs. So anyone who thought that they were a means of negotiation may be wrong.
Absolutely, and more fool them. I mean, the whole tariff story, and I am the last person to be interested in things like tariffs. I have to say, I tried to once read a history of Britain that began with, 10 pages about tariffs because they were important, and I didn't succeed. But anyway, this tariff story is really genuinely interesting because it is just widely acknowledged that he's just used an incredibly bizarre, and that is the word that I have read again and again, kind of rule of thumb approach, right? And combined with a game show approach, combined with what appears to be kind of amnesia of what money is for. So instead, it's almost like Trump thinks we're in a barter system. So everybody loses instead of what can be enabled by the norms of trade as were in existence before, which is the market kind of sets the tariffs to some degree, and things are competitive and the consumer wins. And that's just suddenly been kind of brushed aside by this incredibly bizarre combination of decision making forces and like misconceptions. It sort of goes, and it's just been like very strange to see countries having bent over backwards, including India, with Modi being like, but we're best friends, and then still being slapped with massive tariffs. And so it's a real bloodbath on many, many levels. And I think I've just found it fascinating watching all these people who tried to suck up to Trump getting absolutely nothing in return for that. Obviously Netanyahu is now with Trump, and he's a big kind of, he's obviously really pulling out all the stops.
Yeah, he says that
do that sucking up.
Yes, he says they are going to eliminate the trade deficit with the United States.
But I was a bit confused because I thought, I mean, the report in the Times, no less, said that Israel had a huge trade surplus with the US last year. So I'm a bit confused about that. But maybe, Kate, you can clear that up. But just the point is that, we've done quite well. The UK has done quite well. But I'm beginning to see prominent characters, including billionaires like Bill Ackman, saying now on Twitter, who are huge Trump fans, huge promoters of Trump, saying, oh, actually what Trump's doing is going to destroy America. And other people saying, 60% of Americans are invested in the stock market. This is going to screw them, including voters for Trump. So it's been kind of shocking, terrifying. Everybody's affected, but just watching the way the friends, the enemies, everyone is being affected by this.
Yeah, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink in the last couple of hours, Rebecca, said at an event this afternoon that most CEOs he talks to would say we are probably in a recession now. That comes after Goldman Sachs raised the chances of a US recession to 45%. Today, JP Morgan's chief executive, Jamie Dimon, warned it may be hard to reverse the effect of Trump's tariffs, which she said would drive prices higher and make a US recession more likely. And as you talked about Bill Ackman, President is losing the confidence of business leaders and should pause his trade war. He is not listening to any of that. His most recent comments are no pauses. This continues, Rebecca Reed.
Yeah, and Richard Branson said something earlier today as well, much the same effect. The rich people are worried about this, and that's a sign. What is interesting is that the not rich people seem less worried about it. So I spend quite a lot of my life on TikTok, and I end up hearing a lot of what very normal people with 300 followers in the Midwest think. And it is extraordinary, the devotion and the loyalty these people have. And the conspiracy theory, maybe a slightly unfair way of putting it, but the theory that is continually being mooted by a lot of Americans who I accidentally end up watching is that he is deliberately crashing the economy to make the American dream affordable. The expression they always use is Trump plays chess, not checkers. And if you sort of push back on it, which occasionally when I'm very bored I do, there's a sort of, it's like you violated somebody's religious belief. There is this desperate need to believe that Trump knows something we don't. And if we just hold on and believe long enough, everything will be okay.
But I just wonder if it's because they're not feeling the effects of it yet.
But they're not feeling things getting better. And these are the same people who I knew that Kamala wasn't going to win because I spend so much time on sides of the internet where I don't share views with the people who inhabit it, and they were all saying the day that he gets in it's going to be different, the week that he gets in it's going to be different. There were people getting engaged and saying now we can get married because Trump's won, and eggs are still what, $18. So it already hasn't got better, and yet that doesn't matter to them. They will continue, and you see a bit of it here, right? There are always people who find a reason that something is Brexit's fault, like the traffic's bad because of Brexit. Like, you do get it worldwide. People who pick one belief system they have and then refuse to change it. But I think with Trump, it seems to be the most pronounced case of that I've ever experienced.
I've been corrected on my pronunciation, by the way, of JP Morgan's chief executives. It's Jamie Dimon, pronounced like Simon. Thank you, Andy, for correcting me on that. Loads of people have been getting in touch on Donald Trump and his reaction to these tariffs. Plenty of you have got lots to say. It's like Liz Truss on steroids, says John in Basingstoke. Plenty on Israel, actually, here. We were talking about them a little bit earlier. Is one of the countries seeking to talk to Trump about negotiating on tariffs, the Penguins of Heard Island. Now, the justification for that was interesting. So this is the island only populated by seals and penguins. And the justification from the White House was that actually, even though it's completely unpopulated by people, countries could use that as a get-around. If they didn't apply tariffs on countries, you know, I suppose effectively between, let's say, Australia and the United States, then Australia could use those countries, even though no one lives there, as get-arounds on trade tariffs. So that was their justification on that one. Let's talk about UK response, because we've heard from Keir Starmer as well today. He's been, mild as usual on it. It's really hard to say whether that's the right approach or not. I'll be asking you what you two think in a moment. Ali Renison joined me earlier. She's a former government advisor on business and trade and associate director of SEC Newgate. I asked her what Prime Minister Keir Starmer can actually do to deal with the impacts of tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question about whether when it comes time to the budget in a couple of months that is the Chancellor going to be having to look at both a combination of spending cuts, that we obviously have the government spending review about how much departments can spend coming up in June. But will it be a sort of a combination of spending cuts and perhaps some areas that she stayed away from in the last budget, sort of looking at kind of, the triple lock on pensions? She stayed away from that kind of thing. I think one of the things that the government will probably come under pressure to do is to do sort of more of what it announced today, which is that it's relaxing some of the kind of ways in which the government's businesses have to meet their sort of target.
And that's Ali Renison there. To get the gist of that, so Keir Starmer today saying, no, I won't, again vowed not to increase income tax, VAT or employee national insurance. Also said that Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules will not be tampered with, which really only leaves scope for more spending cuts, because she can't borrow more, she can't tax more, so it will have to be about spending cuts, which puts her in a very precarious position. Again, growth forecasts have been changed today. We know that the perspective for UK growth is down. Rebecca Reed, is Keir Starmer playing this in the right way in terms of how he's dealing with Donald Trump? What do you make of it?
I think thus far he's handled it fairly well. I always go back to the fact that I think the America visit went pretty well. I think that Trump is an Anglophile who enjoys feeling flattered and wanted. And I think the state visit is a very, very important diplomatic necessity, much as I dislike the idea of sharing land space with that man. And I think that, yes, he is being mild and he is being very centre left, and he isn't being, Hugh Grant in Love Actually and giving us the big speech that we want to hear. But that's because he's a grown up. And I really, every day I read the news of the US, and I think I'm so glad that in our country, one grown up is in charge, at least of sorts. So no, it's not thrilling, and I'm not amazed by it. And he hasn't saved the world, but I do think he's got a steady hand on the tiller, and that feels like a departure for recent years.
Well,
so I'm
either that, or he doesn't know what to do about it.
But if you don't know what to do, then the best thing to do is to be considered and calm and wait for more information. And I think the 10% tariff is a difficult arena because that we're in a weird sort of outlier position. We're not in step with the rest of Europe, but it's not the kind of trade deal that we would have liked. And I think he's having to work, he can't look to anybody else. It does kind of separate us off from other people because we don't want bigger tariffs. So I think he is being sensible but to be cautious. And I know I don't think he does know exactly what to do yet, because I think he's waiting to see what's going to play out, but that's smarter than making a rushed decision.
He did utter the words earlier, Zoe Strimpel, Keir Starmer, our future is in our hands. Well, that's the kind of dynamic talking I like. I mean, it's funny, isn't it, when they sort of resort to those copy and paste phrases.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's the most gifted orator that has ever been in 10 Downing Street. I just agree with what Rebecca said. I mean, I think in this case, Starmer has actually looked quite good. I mean, it's interesting seeing the EU kind of have a huge meltdown. I mean, they're quite tariffy and, themselves. But I think Starmer it is for once in my life, I would say it is a bit of a watch and wait. And I think remaining calm, especially while we have all this complicated backdrop of what's going on here, is the wise move. I mean, it pains me that we have to play by Trump's rules at all, and we have to kind of suck up to him and be diplomatic. All these we've seen again and again now, since he's taken office, hurried, attempts to please him, to kind of bring the right gift to the king, and all these like fervid negotiations, and who knows where that all goes, and it's such a waste of energy in so many ways. But all you have to do is just have a quick skim around the globe, and yeah, the Anglophilia is in full fledge. Starmer is doing something right. I mean, we hear that Trump likes David Lammy, which is like completely incomprehensible, but so we are shielded, and that's a huge deal for British people, even though we're having all this economic pain otherwise, and that you outlined before, Kate.
Yeah, look, I mean, he also said today, Trump, that he'd spoken to the Japanese Prime Minister as well. They've got to be open to US cars and agriculture. Talked about how Japan exports an awful lot to the US in terms of cars, but the US don't do anything back. But he did reiterate again that he's open to conversations. We heard from his trade secretary as well that, he's had over 50 countries speak to him. I suppose my only point on this is, if one of those countries isn't Keir Starmer, are we in danger of being left out, of being at the back of the queue? That's one thing to mull over. Trump's also said tonight, he's reiterated his standard line on the EU, which is that they are screwing us on trade, he says. And again, we heard from him that he actually confirmed that if China didn't back down from their retaliatory tariffs, so they said that they're going to whack 34% on the US, to which Donald Trump said, I'll give you 50% then, which takes China's trade tariffs to over 100% cumulatively. He said that China have until Tuesday, I think midnight Tuesday, sometime tomorrow, in order to drop those retaliatory tariffs. Otherwise, he will thwack them again.